Everyone wants their children to successfully transition into adulthood. If you want tips to help prepare them at each stage, keep watching until the end.
Today on Dr. Dev and Mama Sue podcast, we're going to revisit the idea of how to successfully launch adult children by looking at Erikson's stages of development and looking at your kids at their younger ages and seeing how you can support them throughout their life so that by the time that it's time for them to launch, they'll be well prepared.
And we're going to start with stage 1 of Erikson's stages of development, which is the navigation between trust and mistrust. It's a really important stage, and without successfully navigating this one, it's really hard to navigate the future ones. So at this stage, it's all about, this is when a baby's first born until they're 18 months old. It's all about providing their dependency needs. Love, affection, food, shelter, all your basics. These are the things that they need. And one of the things that's really surprised me over the years is how many parents feel ambivalent about providing these needs to newborns. I just think that's so odd, because most people know when babies are born, they're going to be entirely dependent on their parents. But a lot of parents, I think, because of some of the strange teachings we've had in modern psychology, feel like they have to control from the very beginning. Like they've got to somehow not be too indulgent with their children or they'll spoil them. And what is important to understand is that providing someone's dependency needs when they're infants actually leads them to being more independent when they're grown. It's the children who didn't get their dependency needs met when they were infants who end up being more dependent as adults. So it's tricky. But when their dependency needs are met, then they get more confident. They feel a sense of security in relationships, and that's their relationship with others and themselves, and they're also available for emotional attachment, which is, really important for someone's survival. When babies, did you know this? When babies are not touched enough, that they'll just die.
Whoa, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they found this out in orphanages and other places where often there's not enough staff to touch.
So it's sort of this failure to thrive due to lack of touch. Wow.
And they'll just die. And I think it's about this lack of emotional attachment. Babies just aren't meant to survive in situations where they can't get their dependency needs met. And now we're talking about emotional dependency and physical dependency, but still, it's really, really important that they get that. Otherwise, they're not able to attach to others as they get older. And I feel like even though if you withdraw emotional attachment or affection from an older child, maybe they won't die, right? A child over 3 can survive with no touch. Emotionally, they're going to have a really hard time trusting and getting attached to others if they didn't get their dependency needs met.
Now, how do you think that this sort of plays into their life later on, in later years, when they're having a hard time launching as adults?
Right.
How does it really?
Well, like I was talking about, they won't be as confident, so they're going to have a hard time, picking a thing to do and feeling adequate, competent you know, in whatever field they choose. They're going to have a hard time getting jobs because they're going to have a hard time, you know, projecting themselves in a confident way and knowing how to relate more easily with people. So it might be hard for them to interview and things like that.
Right. And maybe even scary for them. So the next stage that we're going to look at is autonomy versus shame and doubt. And this is 18 months to 3 years. And according to Erikson, children at this age, they're focusing on developing their sense of self-control. And since toddlers have little control over themselves, a good place to start is giving them choice. But that's really sort of not enough to give them a sense of autonomy, right? We sort of say, oh, do you want this or that? That's giving them choices, but really supporting their sense of autonomy and independence, it's more than offering choices. So examples of autonomy include toilet training, right? So you're toilet training them so they can independently do that. I know stories of people who've had like horrific experiences with their toilet training. Even people will talk about they felt like their family was impatient, you know, as they were trying to be, you know, as they were trying to become independent in that way. And these memories like last a long time. Picking their clothes is another way to support their autonomy. Sounds simple, but so many times parents will either dress the child or maybe they might give them the choice between several things. But this is literally, no, pick what you want to wear and let's be fine with that. Choosing their own toys. Again, that's not like offering them a choice between this or that. It's literally, it's up to you. Choose what to play with. Give them tasks to do. We see a lot of this. I always think of the example of that Old Enough, that Japanese show, right, where they're giving little kids tasks such as head to the grocery store and, you know, pick up these 3 items and they have to walk a certain distance. Respect their opinions. Often we have this thing with kids where, you know, maybe their opinion doesn't count, or, you know, or we, you know, not on purpose, but maybe sort of like make it seem like a lesser opinion. No, take them seriously, listen to them, you know, show them that you value your opinion. That doesn't always mean that you're going to take everything they say on board. Obviously, you wouldn't do that with an adult, but make them feel heard and seen and listened to. And also help them validate and label their feelings. So many times with little kids, you know, maybe they're crying and I've heard parents say, you're not hurt, come on, shake it off. But no, you know, value what they're feeling, validate that, help them to identify it. And then help them work through challenges and let them work through challenges. You know, don't do all the steps for them, right? You know, give them support, but let them work through challenges. And so when we talk about some of the things, the pitfalls, when kids are older, as they're adults and they're trying to get to the point where you're wanting to make sure that they launch successfully. One of the things that came up was, do they know how to get along with people? So at this age, as you're supporting all of those things and helping them make choices, you can help kids kind of facilitate getting their own friend group by coaching them at home. You know, you're playing with them, modeling sharing, modeling how you interact with others, you know, so that they can get those skills. You can use like role playing, and you can also model good behavior by looking at the way that you interact with your own family and friends. So many times we forget that part. We sort of give lip service to how you do things, but don't kind of support it in our own modeling.
And, you know, I think that the literature supports that children actually learn better through modeling than any other way. So if you're not modeling, you know, pro-social behavior for your children, then it's going to be hard for them to pick up.
Right. You know, you say things to them like, oh yeah, you'll make friends if you're kind and polite and nice, and then they see you being rude to the person at the grocery store or whatever, yelling at people, you know, as you're driving, you know, different things. It's like they're watching that and they're making sense of the world. And then also another thing that we say is a pitfall, and it ties into this idea as they start to gain autonomy, is, do they know how to, it's a pitfall if your adult child doesn't know how to manage money. And it's by preschool age, it's easy to start talking about money with your children. They begin to understand the concept of it. They become curious about the world and they're wanting to learn how things go. So, it's a great time to, when they're in the store, introduce them to the idea of money and how much things cost, and like how much a candy costs versus a toy. And then, they recognize different coins and different numbers. It's not too early to teach them like the value of the different ones. And then understand that money, it's something that you need to keep safe, right? Like, you don't just throw it away. It's valuable. Teach them like, an ice cream maybe costs this, toy costs this. And get them involved in everyday activities, even in the grocery store, such as like, calling out the prices of things by showing them the numbers. And even teaching them that sometimes you may have like plenty of money for the necessities like food, but then you don't have extra money that you want to spend on something like maybe candy or toys or whatever. Just so that as they get older and it's time for them to start to launch, they understand that if they're spending their, not saving their money and spending their money on some things that might not be necessities, at that point they may not get on their own quickly enough. So
I think the other thing about this stage that's really important to think about in terms of launching into adulthood is a lot of parents have difficulty letting their children make their own decisions at this point, and they'll get really anxious around the child growing more independent and making their own decisions. And if parents aren't able to, at least relax about their child separating and having their own opinions and making autonomous decisions at this point, then their children are going to have a really difficult time in adolescence doing those same things. It's just a different level of identity and individuation, this stage is really reflected again in adolescence. So if you can really support their autonomy and their individuality at this stage, it's going to be so much smoother when they're adolescents.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to say one more thing about this. Sometimes people misunderstand the meaning of autonomy, right? They think it just means like, oh, well, what am I supposed to just let them independently do everything on their own? No, it's not exactly that. It's like you have a safe structure, right? You create a safe structure for them. So it's structured, and then you create like support as needed, right? It isn't just independently, you go out there and make all the decisions. You're responsible for keeping yourself safe, go run with scissors, run in the street, No, it's like you create like a safe environment and a safe structure for them to be able to make safe choices and good choices and autonomous choices. And then you're there to support if they need it. Not there to jump in and take over, but there to support if they ask for it or need it. Mm-hmm. So it's not just total independence and chaos.
Yeah. And that takes us nicely into stage 3 of Erikson's stages of development, which is about the conflict between initiative versus guilt. And this is, like we were saying earlier, about when children really need to start taking some independent action and feel like they're able to be effective in the world, right? They can learn new tasks and get good at them and make mistakes, and everyone around them isn't going to fall apart if they make a mistake. Everyone will be supportive and help them.
What age is this?
3 to 5. So think like preschool, where you have your little preschool, they're this budding little self, right? And they're learning how to do stuff. Hey, I've seen in third world countries, 3, 4, 5-year-olds like running things. You know what I mean? Like, this is not like a time to take lightly. This is a time when children actually do come into their own and are able to do a lot of things. And I feel like in this country, I feel like there's a hesitance to let children show how much they can do during this stage. And I think it's a mistake because it might discourage, well, and I've seen it discourage some children from actually developing skills they could be good at, because the parents want to keep them babies and don't want them to know how, powerful and competent they are.
I think part of it is sort of this sheltering them and wanting them to enjoy their childhood and maybe like not wanting to put too much responsibility on them. I think it's still like even a backlash from like child labor laws where you had like little guys who were chimney sweeps, I mean, we're still sort of recovering maybe from that idea, right? But parents sort of make a mistake and stunt the kids' growth sometimes by, not giving them what they need.
100%.
Yeah. So that takes us into the next stage, which is industry versus inferiority. It's from 6 to 11. And so when they successfully navigate this stage, they still feel a sense of self-worth and usefulness to the world. And it led me to think that when kids, as I was doing the research for this, when kids maybe experience trauma between 6 and 11, maybe it interferes with their feelings of self-worth, right? So, that's like something kind of be aware of how important that is, because that leads you into kind of setting yourself up for getting all that you want, all your wants and needs met in life. If you feel like you're not sort of worthy of those, or you're not of use, it can be very damaging if they don't successfully navigate this. So parents can provide constructive feedback, encourage effort in their kids, not just achievement. There's so much of the thing sometimes I think misguided. Sometimes parents want the kid to do something, maybe some certain parents want the kids to do something correctly or perfectly sometimes, rather than supporting like, hey, here are your incremental steps towards achieving that, So yeah, figure out where your kid is, meet them where they are, and provide that consistent, consistent constructive feedback and encouragement. This approach helps foster a sense of industry and competence and confidence in children, and it reduces their feelings of inferiority. So, as we again look at like the pitfalls of getting older and wanting your kid to launch, and we talk about this idea of, do they know how to get along with others? So one way that you would make them feel like they were like a worthy individual and just up to the task of like all kinds of interactions, like say at 6. So you want them to kind of like introduce themselves as a full person to the world, right? And I've seen my friend Megan kind of do this with her son beautifully. Like they'll go on trips to the grocery store or whatever, and she'll model introducing herself and say, Jackson, do you want to introduce yourself? And just like introducing himself to random people. Every person in the world is his equal and his friend, right? And so it's just lovely, the person at the ice cream shop, the person, whatever, the grocery store person, the garbage man, so just sort of like modeling that confidence of making yourself known to the world as like a worthy, useful participant in the world. Yeah, other ways you might do to like support this. Some kids are shy, in the car, like, take time to practice the introduction with your kid. That's the support part, right? Like, hey, we're going to go, I'm going to introduce myself. What do you want to say when you introduce yourself? And then, yeah, just let them make themselves be known. Another thing that's that we talk about as a pitfall as they get older that relates to this stage is, do they know how to handle money, right? So for younger kids, and kids this age, it's like, yeah, have them they're creating a savings. The literature says a clear jar is actually really good for creating their savings, because they can see what's in it and see how much money they're having, like clearly. We remember like the old like piggy bank that we couldn't see, we had to shake and kind of like think and imagine the coins. It's like kind of better if they can see the dollar bills and the coins. And then they also too, again, we're modeling the behavior. So we're wanting them to know how to deal with money, and we're if they see us every time we just want something on a whim, we're slapping down our credit card, or we're sort of not managing our money well, they're again watching this. So you have to sort of this is a good age to help them with that. And then also learn more about what stuff costs, and learn more about this idea of like what the different cost of things and what you need to pay for it. As they get up through it, like to middle school age, so this stage again is from 6 through about 11. You can show them how opportunity cost works. Like, so, well, if you want this thing, this video game, you won't have maybe enough money for, I don't know, like the bike or something that you want. So like teach them, how to kind of differentiate between that. Going to be a great skill as they get to be an adult and know, if I spend my money on this, I won't have enough money for that other thing. And then also parents start to get to a point where they're giving their kids like money, pocket money, and they're just giving it to them maybe for nothing. This is just your weekly allowance, or sometimes they're giving it to them, because you did your chores. But you might actually start by giving them commissions, so they know like the worth of different things, like a commission for the things they do, so they can figure out money, decide like the kinds of work that they might want to do based on that some are worth more than others. And it also helps them just understand that money needs to be earned, and you might earn a little more money for something else. And then, as they're doing this, as you're teaching them this way, you're withdrawing your support in stages, again, supporting that idea of autonomy and independence, and, addressing barriers as they go along, and have them, as you withdraw support, you can increase responsibility, have them do things like go to the laundromat and do their own laundry, different things to support this idea of usefulness to the world. So that they can, enter it as a full, useful person. So yeah.
I really enjoyed the stage with my kids, that 6 to 11 stage. And my kids, maybe like some of your kids, were very entrepreneurial at that point. And so what I would do is I would have them email me a business plan. and it didn't have to be perfect, but I had like a template for them, so they could write in what their business was and what the startup cost would be and when I might expect to get my loan back, if they were asking for a loan for the startup costs, and then I emailed them back like, this sounds good, but how are you going to do this? Have you thought about this? And it was really fun, to watch them, really become little entrepreneurs, and they still are. Like all of my kids are little entrepreneurs, and they're not so little now, but it was really fun to watch them like at 6 and 7 setting up their first business and like figuring it out, and they always like were able to repay me within a week. So that says something, right? Like if you have a good business idea, and if your kids have a good business idea and you loan them the money, they could be making a whole bunch of money by themselves between the ages of 6 and 11, but that presupposes that they've navigated the first 3 stages well, right? So like, had they not had their dependency needs met, they might not have had that kind of confidence and that ease with people to make it possible. So, because the math, that's easy, right?
Yeah. And if you haven't supported their autonomy, you're not going to let them start their own business. So yeah.
That brings us to stage 5, identity versus confusion, which is the adolescent stage. My favorite, not everybody's, but I think that this one's really important for the launching because it's right before the launching. People are trying to figure out who they are, and that often gets thwarted, right? Because the parents or the larger society around the teenagers might not be comfortable with their identity choices, and that just leads to a lot of problems. Everything from mental health problems to a lack of energy around making choices for their future. When teenagers aren't allowed to kind of test out who they are and develop their own identity, what happens is they start to feel, confused about who they are, and they might kind of drift from one unhealthy relationship to another, or from one job to another. They might feel confused about their place in life, whereas if they're encouraged to sort out their identity and figure out who they are, they're going to feel comfortable with making commitments in their life, with taking independent action in their lives. They'll be able to relate to others more easily and also manage their mental health better. And if your mental health is suffering and you're not able to form genuine, meaningful relationships, you're really not in a place to launch into adulthood.
These are all things for you to consider as you're raising your kids up to be successful, happy, launching adults.
Okay, and we hope you feel loved and hopeful until we see you again.